The problem with reviews, best children's books, and glitch, all on this week's Indie Author Showcase. Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase, the podcast by indie authors for indie authors. I am your host, multi-award-winning author Chad Robert Morgan, and let's get to it. So the first thing I want to talk about is reviews, because reviews kind of suck, really. It's the best mechanism we've come up with to determine if, whether it's a book, a movie, a weed whacker, doesn't matter, whether or not it's good. And that is getting external validation from the users. The problem becomes you have to rely on the users to actually know what the hell they're talking about. Adam Conover did a great piece on this where he was talking about reviews. And, like, for example, he was talking about some guy that one-starred Moby Dick. Go on Amazon. Let's just look at a few of the awesome books that have been done throughout. Let's look for anything with, let's look for The Great Gatsby. Actually has received several one-star reviews. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, it has an average review of 4.4 out of 5. Only 2% of its reviews are 1 stars. Only 2% of its reviews are 2 stars. So, for example, this one lady, the book was so boring, I can't believe it gets as much praise as it does. I love classics, but this one kills me. I don't like the 20s, and I don't like reading books about couples cheating. Okay, this sounds more of a personal thing, right? I mean, again, this is one of the greatest literary novels in American history here. Shockingly terrible. I had to force myself to keep reading it, not sure what criteria is used to deem a book a classic. Again, The Great Gatsby. Let's check another one. Let's see what Ernest Hemingway is getting. Ernest Hemingway, A Farewell to Arms. 4% 1-star reviews. I don't know what is going on with this book. There are basic errors in the text, like it was translated poorly by an AI. Makes me wonder if what I am reading is actually what the author wrote. Extremely bland writing. I couldn't stand more than 20 pages of it. Never read any of his books before, and I won't try to read any others. Sorry to say, not my style, apparently. Okay. Again, 1-star reviews for Hemingway. So, again, we're relying on the reviewer to have a certain amount of expertise in what they are reading. And when they don't, this is one reason why we don't do reviews on the podcast. Because I'm not an expert in all genres. And I want it to be all-inclusive. So if I read a romance novel, I'll say, I dug it. Here's what I liked about it. Here's what I didn't like about it. But I'm not going to tack on a 3 or a 5 or a 2 or whatever, because I don't really know that genre. I just have a general understanding of what is good writing. So I don't want to implore my own, like, the one person's like, I don't like war books. I said, well, then don't read a book about war. You're not going to like it. I do the same thing when I'm selling my books. It's like, look, this is a horror book. This is a book about this is a book about that. I've had people look at me and says, The Baby Eater. I don't want to read a book about a monster that eats babies. I said, then don't read this book. Try one of these others. That's fine. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. If you're writing a one-size-fits-all book, you're not going to please anybody. You need to find your customer base and have them review that part. That's fine. That's fine. What the hell's wrong with my voice? Nina next weekend. We'll get to that. But yeah, Adam Conover did this great thing about reviews where it was just like, it's getting to the point where you can't actually leave a negative review because then you'll get a reverse negative review. I've seen the same thing myself driving Uber. It's like, yeah, unless you're a real a-hole, you're a 5-star review. Because if I don't leave a 5-star review, you're going to leave a low review for me. And we're now fighting each other. It's like, I can't do that. So I just, and Uber forces me to review the writers. I can't skip it. So I just automatically 5-star people. And most of the time, I mean, they're fine. They're just there. They're polite. They do what they're asked. Buckle up. Oh yeah, sure, no problem. They're not puking in my car. They're not. They're fine. So that's a 5. Um. So yeah, reviews are almost meaningless, but we need them to feed the algorithm because that's what Amazon uses to show people what books they should read next. So, my question to you, dear viewer, is how do we get out of this mess? Because I don't have an answer. I don't know. I don't know what we do with this. You can go to, professional reviewers, like Kirkus Reviews kind of thing. But even then, it's like you're relying on. I mean, that's probably better than just some random schmo off the street. Let me talk about the review that's got me on this and it's pissing me off. And you're going to think, you got a 1-star review. You're pissed off that somebody didn't like your book. The funny thing is, this is a 5-star review. And I don't like it. I want to get rid of it. I wish there was a way I could challenge the review and get it taken off. And it's a 5-star. It's going to feed the algorithm. But what he's actually written doesn't match the star rating he gave me. So 5-star review. This is for my book, Intergalactic Space Force. For, if you don't know, it's a raunchy sci-fi comedy. The title of the review is Review. Okay, so we're getting to the point. I wanted to like this story, but the fact that it gives all the positive to Trump and one of the main characters is so dumb and named Fish or Guppy. I'm sorry, I just couldn't do it. Just not for me. Okay, not for him. That's fair. Okay, again, they're not one size fits all. They're not going to please everything. That's why there's a big warning label on the back of the book showing off the kind of humor that's going to be in that book. Because I'll tell you, my aunt and uncle hated that kind of humor. They would not have liked these books at all. And that's fine. Gives all the positive to Trump. Okay. I actually worried about writing this scene, not because I was worried about pissing off liberals, but because I was worried about pissing off the right wing. Because I don't want to alienate audiences. However, one of the themes in the book is making fun of politics. And one of the jokes in the book is we have Guppy, aka this character that is so dumb, by his own admission, going up to these portraits. One is the President of Earth. I believe it was, her name was President Brandy Sparkles, who was elected on name recognition because of her long catalog as a porn actress. Then there was the head of the station, which I believe I named Captain Avery Brooks after Avery Brooks of Deep Space Nine, if I remember right. I believe that's where I got the name from. Who played Captain Sisko, who was in charge of his station, so it was kind of sort of a nod, that kind of thing. And then the last was of former Earth President Trump, who formed the Space Force, which he did. This is fact. This is not opinion. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying he formed the Space Force. And in my head canon and the canon of the book, the U.S. Space Force eventually became the Earth Space Force, which eventually became Intergalactic Space Force. And then I basically write a bit of a snarky joke about how he formed the Space Force when we had no interplanetary travel, no ability to create gravity in space. We had no idea that there were aliens out there, let alone any of them were a threat. He must have been a prophetic genius. The passage is dripping with sarcasm. And again, it is from the point of view of the dumbest character in the book. So obviously he didn't get the humor. He didn't get the sarcasm. That's fine. And he still left a 5-star review. So what do these stars mean? Now here's my personal opinion. Okay? Because this is another thing that came up recently is I had somebody who bought Fear at one of the conventions. He left his own review on Instagram, said some pretty nice things about it, and then gave it a 3.5-star review. And I was like, my man, you sound like you liked it a little bit more than 3.5 stars. I'm just saying, right? Just thinking that to myself. I'm not texting him. I'm not, and he didn't put it on Amazon or anything. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. Let that go. It says, other than the actual number rating, the review was actually pretty nice. I'm like, okay, I'm going to let that go. The other day, this has been about a year, he pings me. It's been like a year. Is there a sequel? So this book that he gave 3.5 stars for him, he's actually taking his time to write the author to see if there's a sequel. Now, again, I'm thrilled that somebody is that interested in my book that they want more. That's what we want as an author. We want to tell a story. We want to tell it well enough that you want the next story so we can keep telling stories. That's what we want to do, right? And we want to make the reader happy. That's our job as writers, really, is we got a story, we want to give it out. I know some people are like, no, you don't understand the humor that's intended. Yeah, well, yeah, they get all stuffy and pissy like that because they have a story they want to get out and it's not reaching you. That's them pissed off. Now, there's two parts of communication, right? There's the sender and the receiver, right? The writer is the sender. And the reader is the receiver. Now, in this case, the case of my 5-star review where the guy trashed it, there was a disconnect between the transmission and the reception of the story, right? I intended that passage to be very, very sarcastic. He must think I'm a MAGA hat wielding maniac. Obviously, he did not get the sarcasm that it was intended for that. Or maybe he did and he just still didn't appreciate that Trump got the credit, even though I was making fun of the fact that he was getting the credit for this. Either way, I don't know. But it was meant as a joke. And it didn't land with him. Again, fine. I don't have a problem with the review. I got a problem with the mismatch between the review and the star rating. I'm actually talking myself into a 1-star review at this point. I know, I should just shut up and take the win, but this is me you're talking to. Okay. Getting back to the guy who asked for the sequel. For him to ask for the next book tells me that's not a 3.5-star book. Okay. So what, in my opinion, what are these ratings mean? Well, let's start with 3. Let's start with the middle. What does 3 mean? To me, 3 is it's a book. Okay. It doesn't offend you. It doesn't please you. This is sort of the books that I was forced to read in high school. Like, for example, The Good Earth. Not saying it's a bad book. I'm just saying, from my perception, this was a book that, okay, I was forced to read it in high school. I get the message it was trying to say. It was well-crafted book. I thought it was pretty boring. I didn't get into it. Of course, I was a teenager. This was high school. You know, I had no car chases, had no alien invasions. What the hell did I care, right? Um, but from my perspective, you know, it was not the kind of thing I wanted to read. I would have rather read the next Star Trek novel. And, but I mean, there was nothing wrong with the book, right? It didn't offend me. You know, it wasn't full of spelling errors. It didn't have plots that, you know, went nowhere. It made sense. It just didn't interest me and did not make me want to go out and read the next book by this guy. All right? To me, that's a 3. And I know there's people saying, well, you just railed against people leaving 1-star reviews for The Great Gatsby. Yeah. I get that. I didn't say I was going to leave a review. I'm just saying, from what I got out of the book, that kind of book would have been a 3-star rating for me. I'm not going to go read the series or anything like that. Not that there was a series, but you know what I mean. So let's go up the chain. Okay, so 3, it's a book. It's there. It's not. You're not offended. You're not thrilled with it. It's just sort of there. So let's move on to. So 4 is obviously better, and then 5 is going to be. So what would be the differentiation between a 4 and a 5? I would say a 5 would be a book that's so good that you want to read the next book sight unseen. And I'll give you an example of this. So there's a guy that I've seen at several of these horror conventions. He cosplays as Art the Clown. And one convention he bought the Baby Eater, and he was showing it off to his friend. And I was asking him, hey, do you like? And he's miming because he's being Art the Clown. And at one point he breaks character and goes, yeah, actually I bought this book yesterday. It was actually really good. I'm only about 5 chapters in, but I can really see that you're got, you know, some great pacing going on, all this kind of stuff. And I you know, I felt really good about it, and you know that he was enjoying the book. A couple cons later, I see him again. Fear is out now. And he makes a beeline to the booth. Like he is literally just cutting across the aisle, coming straight at me, like a train out of control, just right to my booth. And he walks up, and again he's in cosplay as Art the Clown, and he's miming again. So he starts tapping on the book, you know. He never picked up the book. He never read the back of the book. Had no idea what the book was about. He just knew it was my next book. That makes Baby Eater a 5, in my opinion. If it's so good that you're going to read the next book regardless. You're just, that was so good, I need more of anything. And I asked him later, because I saw him again in another convention. So this is like the 3rd time I've seen him. And again, he's cosplaying and he's miming. And I asked him, I says, well, you've read both of these books, because Fear was fairly new, right? I'm still self-conscious. Fear's gotten a lot of positive reviews, but I'm still like, I don't know, is this actually a good book? Because I had a lot of difficulty writing Fear, and a lot of that had to do with what was going on in my personal life, which was really getting in the way of writing. So I was like, did you really? And he's like, yeah. I said, which one did you like better? And he did this sort of like, if you've ever seen like a supercomputer on Star Trek, where Kirk gives him like a mind a logic puzzle that they can't figure out. And error does not compute, and then smoke starts coming out and everything like that. He was kind of doing that because he kept going like, "That's it, no," and he kept going back and forth. And I think he finally landed on Fear, but it took him like about a good 5 minutes of juggling these 2 books in his mind to settle on which one of the 2 he liked better. And that to me is a 5-star book. All right. Peter Clines is an author that I dearly love. His latest book, God's Junk Drawer, came out. I carved out time for personal reading for myself, right? Because he's not an indie author. I'm not reading it for the podcast. I'm reading it for fun. I grabbed a book, read it, sent a copy to my daughter. That is a 5-star book, in my opinion, right? If you're buying copies of the book for your friends or relatives, it's a 5-star book. So now we have 3, now we have 5. So what is 4? 4 is going to be in between. You like the book, maybe you'll read more. Okay? Maybe if you got nothing else you got to do. Like, for example, I've read Dresden Files. I've read several of the Dresden Files. Dresden Files is good. I like it. Am I itching for the next book? No. Have I read multiple issues or multiple books in the series? Yeah, I've read multiple. Would I read more? If I had time. If I had nothing else to read, yeah, I'd grab the next one. But you see the difference between that and, me carving out time to read Peter Klein's next book. That's the difference between a 4 and a 5, in my opinion. When you're at a 2, okay, now there's literally issues with the books. You got characters that are 2-dimensional. You have, plot points that go nowhere. 1 has got to be an abysmal failure. There was an audiobook I was trying to listen to one time, and this is not a critique on the book. This is a critique on the audiobook, which you kind of got to separate. Because the audiobook is almost like an adaptation, right? You're taking the exact same words, but now you're translating it to another medium. So sometimes you can have a really good book and a really crappy audiobook. And sometimes you can have it the other way around. And sometimes you can have an audiobook that actually elevates a good book. Like the original Harry Potter books on Audible by Jim Dale, I absolutely love these because Jim Dale brought every individual character to life. And when I do the narration on my books, I try to do, well, not Jim Dale, but I try to make sure every character has a unique voice. And I don't mean just in the writing style, but I mean in the sound. So that way, while you're listening, you can tell that this is character A, or this is character B, or this is character C, right? And I'm trying to get that happening in the voice acting. And I think that's the number one problem. This is when you're doing an audiobook, you're voice acting, you're not just reading. And that's problem number 1 with some of these audiobooks, but I digress. We'll get to that in a future episode. Point being is, I was listening to this audiobook, and the narrator was absolutely horrible. Now, the book might have been fine. The book might have been good. I couldn't get through the audiobook to find out. Because she had the same cadence in every line. It didn't matter if she was running from a grizzly bear, or if she just got a kiss from her boyfriend. It was always the same cadence every time. Oh my God! So yeah, it was very painful, and I'm like asking other people, is it just me? He says, no, this is hard to listen to. This is really not good. So from, like I said, I don't know what to rate the book, but the audiobook itself, the performance, that was a 1. It was so hard to listen to. One of the audiobooks I got that I thought was going to be really, really good was a Kurt Vonnegut book. Which one was it? I forget which one it was. It was a Kurt Vonnegut book, and I like Vonnegut. I got into Vonnegut in high school, and we read Cat's Cradle, and I've read several more of his books. Breakfast of Champions, Bluebeard, Sirens of Titan. I was into a Vonnegut kick for a while, right? I really did like Vonnegut. And this was one I hadn't gotten around to reading yet, so I'm like, okay, we'll get this. And it was narrated by James Franco. And this is when James Franco was really popular at the time. And I'm like, well, this should be good. And James Franco so phoned it in, and I'm like, oh my god, this is boring, killing me, James Franco. Um, and it was difficult to listen to. Right, the performance was so bad, and you know, he's not a bad performer. It was just a bad performance. So that to me is a 1 star. So when you're reviewing books, try to keep that scale in mind. Um, do you want to read more of this author? If the answer is no, not really, it's probably a 3. If you didn't finish the book, you're probably in the 2 or the 1, right? If you finish the book and you're like, it's probably a 3. If you finish the book and you're like, that's pretty good. If I got time, I'll pick up another one. Now you're at a 4. If you're like, oh my god, dude, you gotta read this book. This book is awesome. Now you're at a 5. All right, does that clarify things? This is just my opinion. If you disagree with me, please. I went on a whole rant last week about, please disagree with me. Please write on your comments. Please reach out to me. You can email me at ias@spectralinkproductions.com. That's Indie Author Showcase. ias@spectralinkproductions.com. You can leave comments on the podcast, on Spotify, YouTube, Podbean. I mean, you can send me messages on YouTube or whatever. There's multiple ways to get a hold of me. People do not have a problem getting a hold of me, apparently, because I get all kinds of random crap. Feel free to reach out to me if you agree, if you disagree, if you have a better idea than peer reviews, which apparently are somewhat flawed. Last thing I want to talk about before we get to the showcase today is children's books. And this came up because our neighbors have a little one. She's about a year old now. And I was like, yeah, I want to get her a toy. Saying hi to the cute baby next door is about the closest thing I am to a grandfather right now. Yes, I'm telling my children, it's about time. I'm 54 years old. My goal in 10 years from now is to do nothing but sit on the couch and bounce grandchildren on my knee. That's what I want to be at 10 years from now. That and just writing books. That's all I want to do. So I kind of wanted to spoil the neighbor's kid a little bit. I was like, oh man, get her a toy. I don't want to spend too much money on a toy. That kind of thing. Something really loud and obnoxious to annoy the parents, because that's definitely what you want to do with a toy. I'm like, you know what? I can do one better. Let's get her a book. And I started thinking of some of the classic books, and I went searching, and I found one of them. There's one more I want to find. But the first one that I found was Where the Wild Things Are, which was one of the favorite books reading to my daughter, and later to my son Alex. Back in the day, when I was in the Bay Area, there was this area in San Francisco known as the Metreon, and the whole top floor was themed to Where the Wild Things Were, Where the Wild Things Are. One half of it was a big, huge Where the Wild Things Are play area that my daughter loved. She loved going to that. The middle was a cafeteria themed off of The Night Kitchen, which was another one of the author's books. Excuse me. And then the remaining was a big, giant gift shop, which was mostly Where the Wild Things Are, right? She loved it. I don't know how many times we went down to the Metreon. We were always trying to come up with excuses to go down there. It was also where the closest IMAX theater was, so that helped. So, hey, let's see Beauty and the Beast on IMAX, and then go upstairs and go Where the Wild Things Are. That was a good daddy-daughter date right there. I had an opportunity to do a lecture for my day job at Autodesk, at an Autodesk event. And they put me up in the hotel and everything like that. And we brought my son, who was probably about 1 at the time, and I wanted to take him to where the wild things are. And unfortunately, by that point, the Metreon was a shadow of itself, and that top floor was empty, which was a crying shame. My daughter loved that area. It was always happening. It was always busy. And my son didn't get a chance to see it. It was gone before he existed. So yeah, Where the Wild Things Are, a very special place in our hearts, for me and my daughter specifically. Love that book. Second one would be The Lorax. I bought this book. I found it in a bookstore in the Philippines, so I could start reading it to all my nieces and nephews in the Philippines. It is hard to read that book without tearing up for me. I I've read it how many times I don't know, and I still start trying to keep from crying when I get to the end of that thing. To me, The Lorax is a very powerful book, and it's a great book for kids. The last one on my you have to get this book if you have a kid series, would be The Monster at the End of This Book. They still make these little golden books. They're little small books about this big, and they have a golden binding on the side, and they're only about 10 pages long. You can still find them today at Target and Walmart and everything like that. They're a dime a dozen, and they'll have all kinds, and it'll be based on anything. It's like now they publish them on Bluey and Taylor Swift and whatever the hell is popular today. But one of the all-time classic golden books is The Monster at the End of This Book, and I think they still print them. The monster at the end of this book, as the title suggests, is that there's a monster at the end of the book, and you are with Grover from Sesame Street fame. So, I mean, yes, this is kind of some capitalism crap going in there, but that's fine. Problem is, Grover's scared of the monster at the end of this book, so he keeps begging you not to turn the page. And then you turn the page, and he's like, "You turned the page!" As a kid, I thought that was hilarious. And then Grover will start putting barriers to keep you from turning the page. He'll start, like, nailing wood planks to the book to keep you from turning the page. And then you turn the page, and it all comes down. It's like, oh, you are very strong. He'll start building brick walls to keep you from turning the page. Anything to keep you. And then finally, it's like, look. Every time you turn a page, you're one page closer to the end of this book. And there's a monster at the end of this book. And finally, you're getting to the end. It's like, look, we only got one page left. Please, I'm begging you, don't turn the page. And then as a kid, you're like, you turn the page. And then you see the monster at the end of the book, which was Grover. It's like, the monster at the end of this book was me. And you were so frightened. Love that book. It is got to be one of the best kids books ever. I mean, and like I said, it's a Sesame Street book, and these little golden books, so many of them were just like schlock, just to get kids to read something. And it's like, oh yeah, you like the Avengers? Here's a golden book about Black Panther. Here you go. Read that. Enjoy that. Whatever. I mean, they churn these things out by the dozens. But this one stuck. This one was good. They even wrote a sequel with Elmo, which, I mean, it's basically the same book, just now you have Elmo being snarky on the side. But that is a classic. And then, I mean, that's, like I said, still sold to this day. So, what children... let me finish it up by saying the one book I will never read again in my entire life is Hop on Pop. And I don't know why my daughter loved that book so much that she wanted me to read it constantly. And I would take the book and I would put it aside. I says, we read that yesterday. Let's get a different book this time. And the little smart ass would go, okay, Daddy, and reach over and grab the other copy of Hop on Pop. Why she had two, I have no idea. And I think she just really loved the part of the book where the kids were jumping on Pop. So I think she was secretly plotting to do that. It's the only reason I can think of that she liked that book so much. Go Dog Go got kind of old after a while too, but Hop on Pop was the bane of my existence. Just because I had to read it so many goddamn times. So those are the children's books I'm recommending, and I'm sure there's plenty more. I want you to tell me, what children's books do you think need to go up on this list of books that children really need to read? I mean, their childhoods are incomplete if they don't read these books. Let me know. Give me a list. And I'm talking little kids, right? I'm talking Golden Age books, the kind of picture books that you got to sit with your kid and read to them, the Dr. Seuss kind of books. We're talking, kindergarten age kids. What are the books that you think need to go on this list? Let me know. So let's go on to this week's showcase. I am currently listening to a book that the author I met at Hellmouth Con, but I'm still getting through the book. So what do we do when we're behind? We go to the comics. Yes. All right. So we're doing our comics today, and today we are doing Glitch. So, as always, reviewing comics is a little difficult because you're really just getting a small slice. I have the first 3 episodes, the first 3 issues. I went through them rather quickly because comic books are pretty easy to go through. That's one reason why I like them, because they're great. They're great filler episodes. So far, the story is interesting. It's a post-apocalyptic world. This young girl is a scavenger. She's got a robotic arm. So apparently she lost an arm and had it replaced. And she stumbles on a dig that is a little bit more than what she expected. And it turns out there's a bunch of other questionable people also trying to get into this dig. Well, she gets in first. And she awakens an AI that is not really working quite right. So she names it Glitch, hence the name of the comic. So what did I like about it? First of all, it's got a pretty strong start of a story. We have a MacGuffin, which is basically Glitch. We have these band of characters trying to capture it for reasons currently unknowns. I'm not sold on the fact that they're actually bad guys. They may not be good guys, but I'm not convinced they're bad guys at this point, if you know what I mean. Sometimes good people do questionable things for the right reasons, if you know what I mean. The more the anti-hero kind of vibe. We do get a little bit of a glimpse of the character's personal history, where apparently she lost her father. She's a little upset that her father was a bit of a treasure hunter and didn't value the treasure that he currently had at home, which was his daughter. So that part I'm really digging. The art style is it's crisp and clean. I'll give it that. Let's start with that, because I've read other comics where the art was really good, but it was good in the sense of like if you looked at an individual panel or something like that, it was good, but everything was so dark that it made it difficult to read the book. This is the opposite. This is very, very crisp. This is very, very clean, very, very bold colors. Not a lot of use of shading. I mean, the drawings do appear somewhat flat, um, but it does make it easier to read. It makes it easier to distinguish the characters. I mean, like I said, that was one of my complaints with Kraken, which I thought was a great comic book series, but the art style was so dark, and everybody was wearing kind of like the same dark clothes. It was kind of hard to tell who was who. I thought Kraken might have been a bit better written, um, but the art style was um, a little bit of a drag. This has the opposite, where if anything, they could spend a little bit more. In fact, let's get to the parts that didn't work quite as well. One is, as well as the art style worked, I thought we could have a little bit more in terms of shading to make the characters a little bit more three dimensional. Also thought, the writing, again, and I see this a lot with indie comics, is like, I think they want so quickly to get through the story that they don't want to bog it down. Remember what I was saying earlier about the transmitter of the message versus the receiver of the message? Because I was thinking about this the other day when I was reading another indie. I was like, why do I not have this problem when I'm reading a Marvel comic? I'll pick up Marvel Zombies, and I'm not lost. And it's not because I already know who Spider-Man is, right? Because we're in zombie universe, the rules have kind of gone out the window. And I think one of the reasons why is they're not afraid to put text on the panel. I think a lot of indie comic writers, they focus more on the art, which you can get away with if you're really good with it. There's a very classic GI Joe comic where Snake Eyes goes to rescue Scarlet, and there's not a single word of dialogue in the entire book. Fantastic episode. It's been reprinted a couple times. In fact, they did a sequel to that where Storm Shadow and Scarlet go in to rescue Snake Eyes. So they kind of redid that shtick, but just one of the all-time classic. So if you are careful with your panel layout and your art, you don't need words. With that said, I think they could have done a little bit more of, adding those little not even dialogue, but those little boxes like you have in your DC and Marvel comics, like where it's just a little bit of a narration that would help strengthen the book. I mean, again, I didn't get lost. I understood what was happening. I think, what was it? What was the comic book? We gave a book of the year. Oh my god, I'm blanking on the name now. Myopia, that's what it was. Oh, I had to think of it. I know, we gave a book of the year. Myopia was almost the opposite problem. There was so much text. Comic books has got to find that balance, right? If it's pure art, you'll probably lose some of your readers, right? They'll get a little lost. If it's nothing but text, your readers are going to get bored, because, like, if they wanted to read a book, they would have gotten a book, right? So there's always got to be a balance that I do feel a lot of indie comics don't quite strike, in my experience. And that's just a general rule that I have seen in doing indie comics. So that would be like my one critique, or my two critiques on this. Is one, a little bit more shading, make the art a little bit feel a little more three dimensional. The other would be a little bit more narration going on in the story to help bring home what it is we're actually looking at. So But other than that, I thought it was a good solid start. Again, only 3 issues in. Looking forward to seeing where the story goes. I kind of got an idea of where the story is going, but we'll see if I'm correct. So feel free to check it out. No show next week. I will be at Creep IE Aftermath. I keep saying I'm going to do something special when I do these events, and I never do because I'm always swamped. So don't count on hearing from me next week. I am going to be busy selling books and hauling stuff back and forth. So Creep IE Aftermath in Ontario, July 10 through 12. Be there. Get your autographed copy of Fear or any of my other books. Fear, small desert town realizes that the urban legend in the piece of undeveloped land next to them is not really an urban legend. Check out Fear, check out The Baby Eater, check out The Last Rite. And if you're a younger reader, check out Short Bites Volume 1. All of which is going to be available at my table, at my booth, there at Creep IE Aftermath. So I hope to see you there. If not, I'll see you the week after, right here. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll know when the next episode comes out.